Hi, this is Don Forsyth. I'm speaking to you today about group dynamics and specifically about cohesion and group development. Today's presentation, this particular segment, I'm going to just deal with the concept of cohesion, discuss its definition and its characteristics, focusing on the basic sources, and the next presentation will deal with group development, how cohesion develops over the time. I'll admit that I'm a little sensitive about the concept of cohesion because it's that one characteristic that when you're discussing a group, you need to know if it's cohesive or not. And people generally hope that their groups will become cohesive. That is, that they'll be unified, that they'll be solid, that they'll be able to meet their objectives collectively rather than as individuals. But the concept is quite complicated, and over the years it was first defined by Festinger, Schechter, and Back as total field of forces which act on members to remain in the group. There's lots of different definitions, but I like a more complex analysis of cohesion, as you might imagine, particularly a systems view, where it's recognized that a group can become cohesive in a lot of different ways. Also, a group, although many groups may start differently, vary in terms of their composition, for example, and their tasks, they still may become cohesive in the long run. So I like to tie cohesion back to its essential sources. And in this particular presentation, I'll identify just these 5, but I'm sure there's actually more sources of cohesion than just these. And I also want to emphasize again that this is a multifaceted approach to cohesion. So cohesion is going to be based on multiple sources, and plus it will exist at multiple levels. And by that I mean it's going to be very important to take into account the individual members' connection to their group and the group overall. For example, an individual may like the group very much, and that would increase the group's cohesion. But the group itself, as a unit, does the individual like collective individuals within the group? And at that level, a group may not be cohesive. And so it's important to determine whether or not we're talking at an individual level of analysis or a group level of analysis. This maybe would be clear when I talk about social cohesion, the label given for just attraction between the group members or attraction to the group as a whole. So of course, if an individual likes the group itself but perhaps doesn't like even individual members, that will be a different form of cohesion than if people are friends within the group. Task cohesion is the group's commitment to its task. The case study for this particular topic within group dynamics is the 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team. And although it was cohesive in many ways, there were friendships within the group, and they thought of themselves as a single unit, and they had strong emotional reactions. It was their task cohesion that united them. They were committed to reaching a particular goal. They wished to medal in the 1980 Winter Olympics, and they worked for over a year collectively in order to improve their group and their group's teamwork so that they could reach that goal. So that will unify a group in many cases, this shared commitment to group goals. Sometimes this is expressed with related concepts such as collective efficacy and group potency. Group potency is the idea of the overall strength of the group, almost a kind of collective self-esteem. Collective efficacy is a more behavioral term. It's the shared idea that the group members and the group itself is capable of performing behaviors, exhibiting behaviors that will ensure the group's success. Collective cohesion is the overall identity of the individuals with the group. In some cases we speak of a group where the individuals seem to be bonded together so tightly they're like a family unit, a nice family unit that is. You hear that about sports teams, for example, that were all a part of one big family. They're united as a group. At the individual level, sometimes individuals identify with a group, so they feel tightly bonded to it. And that's the essence of this identity fusion theory of group cohesion, that an individual's collective identity becomes paramount and their individual identity, personal identity, is insignificant relative to the magnitude of their social identity. Cohesive groups generally have a positive emotional atmosphere within them. There's different words usually to describe the emotional cohesion of a group, but morale is a pretty basic one. When the group is feeling good about itself, feels positive about its capabilities, morale runs high. Esprit de corps is the French word to describe this overall positive feeling. Relational cohesion theory focuses on positive emotions, although not maybe the vibrant emotions we expect to see in a cohesive group, but the basic emotions where when people interact with each other on a regular basis, overall those interactions tend to be positive ones. And as a result, a positive feeling develops between individuals within a group and between an individual and the group itself. Final source of cohesion that has to be considered is the structure of the group. How's the group organized? Is it hierarchical, for example? Is it a flat structured group? Are there subgroups within the group? If you have a group which is broken up into various subcomponents, it's likely that those subcomponents might be highly cohesive, but the group itself may not be cohesive. So it's important to take into account the structure of a group. For example, as Ziller argued in his theory of open and closed groups, open groups tend to be less cohesive than closed ones because they're not clearly boundaried, and you don't know from one day to the next who will be a group member. But if you're part of a closed group, you can come to rely on others and know that they'll be present over a long period of time. A classic study in the area of group dynamics conducted by the sheriffs. They did actually a series of studies in which they examined the group processes of young boys at summer camps. And they did this a couple of times. Probably their most famous one is the summer camp they conducted at the Robbers Cave. This is a study they conducted before that, where they watched boys, split them into two groups, watched those groups develop a structure, and then they studied their overall group dynamics. And what they discovered in this case is two groups, the Bulldogs and the Red Devils, and they had very different looking structures. As you can see just at glancing at this, that you can see that down here there's a few members down here at the bottom in terms of influence, not well liked, but the majority of the members are clustered into this area, as opposed to this particular group, the Red Devils, where you have two individuals with a lot of friendship links to them. So here's the primary leader and the second in command. You have a large number of individuals down here, but there's not a lot of arrows linking them one to another. Generally, they link up to the two primary leaders. And you have quite more people than you have in the Bulldogs, who are down with very few friendship choices identified. So as we had three down here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 individuals who don't get a lot of friendship choices. The implications are pretty obvious that the Red Devils is likely to be not as cohesive a group as the Bulldogs. This table summarizes these 5 components: social, which is attraction primarily, task, commitment, collective identification with the group and the overall unity of the group, emotional and esprit de corps, and the structure of the group. The next topic will be group development, how a group changes over time. But for now, this is Don Forsythe. Thank you for joining me again.